No. Scope
No.
management plan is the correct. The result of this process is scope management plan. What do you mean by scope management? What are we doing in this process? What are we thinking in this process?
We're defining the scope.
Okay. Defining the scope, we have a separate process.
Yes, and then plan how to execute and monitor and deliver.
Okay.
Identify scope.
In this process, we are thinking in advance how we are going to manage the scope of the project, which involves planning and control. Basically, only two areas we have the problem: planning and control.
And control.
There we are thinking about how are you going to collect the requirements from the stakeholders? What are the tools and techniques you may apply? How are you going to define the scope of work? What are the tools and techniques you will apply? What is the process involved in finalizing the scope of work with the stakeholders? Where we need to finalize the scope of work in the defined scope process, which is project scope statement. How are we going to achieve that? How will you achieve that? Maybe you said we will be conducting multiple workshops, review with the stakeholders before sign up the scope of work. That's what you need to define. What is your strategy in finalizing the scope of work? Then we will think about how are you going to create the WBS? What are the tools and techniques you may apply? Then we will think about how are you going to control the scope of work? What is the frequency of progress measurement in determining the scope performance? What is our control threshold in terms of managing the scope of work? What is my control threshold? We may have variances while you are doing the work in the scope performance, but how much variances is acceptable to the stakeholders? Maybe 10% variance is the control threshold. So we need to set the control threshold. And also we need to think about how are you going to get the acceptance of the completed deliverables from the stakeholders. This is what we are thinking under the scope management plan. So you will have a clear strategy in your head in managing the scope of work throughout the project life cycle. As I told you before, project managers must have advanced thinking. How will you plan? How will you execute? How will you control? How will you do? Then in the second process, collect requirements. What are we doing in this process? Collect requirements. What are we doing? What is the result of this process?
Is the requirement management plan?
The requirement management plan is created as part of the scope management plan.
Scope management plan.
Plan scope management process itself.
Then the requirement documentation, requirement traceability matrix.
Requirements documentation. That's the result of this process. And requirement traceability matrix. So what are we doing in this process? Collect requirements.
We're understanding the requirement from the stakeholders.
We are collecting the detailed requirements from the stakeholders.
Yeah,
with respect to the product details,
standards,
project
policy,
methodology, standards, and all can be detailedly determined. This is the detailed collection of requirements, product requirements, project requirements, product requirements, test requirements, verification requirements, handover requirements, and so on. Right. The next step, define scope. What are we doing in this process? Define scope. What is the result of this process?
It's the scope statement. The scope baseline.
Processes, project scope statement.
Not the scope baseline, no?
Scope baseline which comes under create WBS.
Okay.
So what is project scope statement? What are we doing in this process? We are trying to come up with a integrated details of the project by integrating the product requirements and project requirements in such a way in order to make sure all the stakeholders have a clear understanding about the scope of work, what is included in this project, what is not included in this project. Such a level of clear definement must be available in our project scope statement. Basically, we are using this process to finalize the scope of work for the project. To finalize the scope of work and get the stakeholders sign off in this process. Clear?
Okay.
The next step is create WPS. What are we doing in this process?
Yeah, we are creating the what I call breaking down all the activities into smaller groups and until the activity level.
Activity level, no. We are breaking down the scope of work into the deliverables we are going to produce in this project.
Okay. Okay.
When we are breaking down the scope into deliverables, we are able to understand the entire project deliverables. We can be able to visualize the project. It is easier for us to plan, execute, control. So we are basically making our life easier by breaking the scope of work into deliverable oriented components until we reach the deliverable smaller in size. That is called WPS. What is the result of this process? Is the scope baseline.
Okay.
What is scope baseline contains? There are 3 documents together called the scope baseline. What are those 3 documents? When I say scope baseline, it contains 3 documents together. It's called a scope baseline. What are the 3 documents? Do you remember? These things cannot forget. Project scope statement, WBS, and WBS dictionary.
Okay.
Project scope statement, which is the result of defined scope process, WBS, which is the result of this process, and WBS dictionary, which is the collection of all the packages or deliverables details and summary. So that we can able to easily manage each package or each deliverable by meeting all the project requirements, which makes our life easier in managing the deliverable throughout the project life cycle, which is WBS dictionary. So this is the basis for us to measure our performance during execution with respect to the scope performance. The next process is validate scope. Where it is in the monitoring control process group. Here we are getting the acceptance of the completed deliverables from the stakeholders. What is the result of this process? Accepted deliverables. The deliverables which are signed up by the stakeholders are called as accepted deliverables. That is the result of the process, which is the key input for us in closing the project. Control scope. What is control scope? In this process, we are managing the performance of the scope. So we are measuring our actual performance periodically. It could be weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, comparing with our scope baseline to see whether we are executing the work according to the scope baseline or there are variances from the scope baseline. If there are variances, we need to come up with a necessary corrective actions or preventive action to improve the scope performance. That's called scope control, which is control scope process. What is the result of this process? Where is Bari? What's the result of this process? Yes. What is the result of this process? Control scope.
Control scope. Yani, I think after control the scope, if we finish the control scope session,
Yes.
it means maybe we are at the end of the project.
No, not necessarily you are going to close the project by controlling the scope. Of course, we need to control the scope, control the schedule, control the cost, control quality. All are happening at the same time.
Yes.
But each process have different focus. That's all. All the control processes, what is the result? What is the result of control processes? Yesterday also I spoke about it. Work performance information.
Information, yeah.
Work performance.
Information. All the control processes, this is the result.
Yeah.
Work performance information. Control scope, control schedule, control cost, control quality, whatever the control processes, result is work performance information. Okay? Very good. So basically, we know what is scope of work. It refers to all the work involved in creating the product of the project and the processes which are going to utilize them to create the product. So the scope is divided into two key parts. One is the product scope, other one is the project scope, which I explained to you. When I say product scope, it defines the features and functions of the product or service or result of the project. How are you going to say we achieved the product scope? Completion is measured against the requirements. If you achieve the requirements, you fulfill the product scope. What is project scope? The work that must be done to deliver the product scope or the product of the project is called as project scope. Where the completion is measured against the plan. If you complete all your plans according to a plan, that means you fulfilled the product scope. If you fulfill both, you fulfill the entire scope of the project. That's what it means. To ensure a successful project, both product and project scope must be well integrated. So basically, when I say scope management, which includes the processes required for ensuring that project includes all the work required and only the work required to complete the project successfully. What does that mean? We must be doing only the activities which are necessary for creating the products of the project or deliverables of the project. If we are doing any work which are not related to the production of the project deliverables, that means we are wasting our time, we are wasting our resources. When it will happen? If the scope is not clear, this is what will happen. You will be ending up with it. You are spending resources, spending time, spending cost, but you are not creating the required project deliverable. That's what will happen. The scope is not clear. That's what we are trying to avoid by clearly defining the scope in such a way all the work required, they focus on only the work required for achieving the project deliverable successfully. Managing the project scope is primarily concerned with defining and controlling what is included and what is not included in the scope, which is clear for you. Some key concepts on the scope management. When we talk about the project life cycle, there are two approaches available. One is the predictive approach and the other one is adaptive or agile approach. In the predictive approach, deliverables are defined in detail at the beginning of the project, and any changes to the scope is progressively managed through the change control. Whereas in the adaptive or life cycle approach, the deliverables are developed over multiple iterations, where a detailed scope is defined, approved for each iteration when it begins. Projects with the adaptive life cycle are intended to respond to high level of changes and require ongoing stakeholder engagement. That's why in the PMI nowadays, recommending to adopt adaptive approach or agile approach. Why? They are mostly promoting in the 6th edition and the 7th edition, they are very heavily promoting. Nowadays, the changes are happening throughout the project life cycle, which is we need to manage. So, agile approach is the best approach for managing the changes happening throughout the project life cycle. The overall adaptive project will be decomposed into set of requirements and work to be performed. Sometimes they call it as product backlog. At the beginning of each iteration, the team will work to determine how many highest priority items on the backlog can be delivered within the next iteration. So in this case, three processes: collect requirements, define scope, create WBS. These are repeated in each iteration in the adaptive life cycle. Whereas in the predictive project, like our construction is always a predictive project, these processes are performed at the beginning, and then you are updating through the integrated change control when there are changes to the plans or scope of work. In the adaptive or agile life cycle, the sponsor or customer representative should be continuously engaged with the project to provide feedback on the deliverables when we are creating the deliverables, and we need to ensure that the product backlog reflects the current needs of the customer. So we use two processes: validate scope and control scope are repeated in each iteration in the adaptive life cycle. Whereas in the predictive project, validate scope occurs for each deliverable, which is generally major deliverables, and phase review. On each phase, we may go through the validate scope process. Control scope is an ongoing process throughout the project life cycle. In the predictive projects, the scope baseline for the project is the approved version of the project scope statement, work breakdown structure, and the associated WBS dictionary. As we know, the baselines can only be changed through the formal change control procedures in the integrated change control process, whereas we are using the base scope baseline for comparing our performances and taking action accordingly. So we may use validate scope or control scope or repeated for each iteration. Projects with adaptive life cycle use backlogs, which is called, which includes product requirements and user stories to reflect the current needs of the stakeholders. These are some key concepts about the scope management you need to know. You know what is happening in this project. And give me 5 minutes, I will come back. 1 minute, I have some small work. Okay, hold on for a while. Okay, let's go into the plan scope management. So basically in this process, you are creating a scope management plan where you are documenting how the product and project scope will be defined, validated, and controlled. Basically, we are thinking about how the scope will be planned, how the scope will be executed, how the scope will be controlled. So the scope management plan is a component of the project management plan, which describes how the scope will be defined, developed, monitored, controlled, and validated. So you have a clear strategy in your hand. Of course, the development of the scope management plan and detailing of the project scope begins with the analysis of the information contained in the project charter. Of course, that's a high-level information available with us currently. And the latest subsidiary plans of the project management, historical information from our organizational processes, and any other relevant enterprise environmental factors can be considered while we are developing the scope management plan. Let's look at the process. So when I want to develop the scope management plan, what I need to have in my hand?
Project charter.
Project charter, yes, definitely, because that is the only information available with us now.
Mr. Barry is not here, sir, and Mr. Mohammed.
It's here. Mr. Muhammad?
Mr. Barry is here.
Everybody's here?
Yeah.
Muhammad is back. Barry?
Mr. Barry came and he just left again.
He's back.
Shall we start again?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Let's go into the plan scope management process. So in order to come up with a scope management plan, what I need in my hand? At present, I have the project information which is available in the project charter. So I can utilize it. So project charter is the key input for me.
Okay.
If other plans are available, like quality management plan, project lifecycle description, which is available, development approach available, which these two we have done in the develop project management plan process. Develop project, when we are developing the strategy, how we are going to manage this project with a life cycle approach. So whether it is a predictive life cycle or adaptive life cycle, how we have divided the project, what is the approach we are going to use, that's all available with us so that we can utilize. So that we can come up with a scope management strategy. Enterprise environmental factors, definitely useful information. Organizational processes. Here, we can use our previous similar projects scope management plan. We can use our previous project scope management plan as a template in order to come up with a strategy for this project. Maybe the same strategy will work here. And also, we have lessons learned from the past project, especially scope related lessons. What kind of scope related problems we face in the first project, why we face such a problems, what kind of action we have taken, how we manage those problems in the first project. If you read through those documents, we can understand what kind of scope related problems we may face in this project, in this nature of project. So that we can come up with a scope management plan in such a way that how can we prevent such a problems in this project. That is our main approach over here. What are the tools and techniques available with us? Expert judgment. Are we able to develop the scope management strategy ourselves? We need to consult technical experts, cost experts, the people, those who are having experience in the scope area, other quality. So we may use expert judgment.
ഞാൻ ജനറേറ്റർ നിങ്ങളോടൊപ്പം ജനറേറ്ററിനൊപ്പം തന്നെ ഡീസൽ ഒഴിച്ച് കത്തിക്കേണ്ടി വരും.
Second technique is data analysis. Data analysis. Whereas we are talking about alternative analysis, where we think about by considering the different nature of work in the project or considering the key deliverables, what kind of methodology, technology is available in the industry, how can we use this methodology in terms of achieving this project work can be discussed. That is under alternative analysis. What might be the methodology you may use in fulfilling the scope of work? That's what you are thinking under this. The third technique is meetings, which is workshops. Through the planning meetings, we are coming up with a strategy for managing the scope, where we are documenting under scope management plan. That is the one of the output. The second output is requirement management plan. Requirements management plan. This is straightforward process. We create the scope management plan, requirement management plan, both are under project component of the project management plan. In the data analysis, we are using alternative analysis. Basically, you are thinking about the various ways of collecting the requirements, elaborating the project and product scope, creating the product, validating the scope, controlling the scope, all are being thought about and document the procedure, what we are going to use in terms of managing the entire scope of work. That's called data analysis technique. Third one is meeting. In the project meetings, you may include project manager, sponsor, selected team members, selected stakeholders, or anyone with the responsibility for the scope management. We will be utilizing them in this meeting to come up with a approach for managing the scope of work. So in the scope management plan, basically we are defining how the scope will be defined, developed, monitored, controlled, and validated. Where you are thinking about what is the process for preparing the project scope statement? What is the process that enables the creation of the WBS from the detailed project scope statement? What is the process that establishes how the scope baseline will be approved and maintained? What is the process which specifies how the formal acceptance of the completed project deliverable will be obtained? The scope management plan could be a formal and informal, broadly framed, or highly detailed based on the needs of the project. Second output is requirement management plan. See, the next step in the next process, we are going to collect detailed requirements, right? So here we must have a strategy how we are going to manage the requirements collected from the stakeholder, which is being defined in the requirement management plan. Where the project requirement management plan is a component of the project management plan, where you are describing how the project and product requirements will be analyzed, documented, and managed. Some organizations, they call this as a business analysis plan. Okay. What are the contents of the requirement management plan? You are thinking about how the requirement activities will be planned, tracked, and reported. Configuration management activities like how the changes will be initiated, how the impact analysis will be carried out, how they will be traced and tracked and reported, as well as authorization level required for approving the changes, requirements prioritization process, metrics that will be used for and rationale for using them, traceability structure, which is the requirement traceability matrix is being created. This is the sample scope management plan. See that? Say for example, the name of the project, introduction, preparing the scope statement. We read through some statement. Preliminary scope statement will provide the basis for preparing more detailed scope statement. The scope statement need to be reviewed with the key stakeholders, especially project sponsor, potential suppliers, and users of the deliverables. Follow the corporate template when available, and be sure to have expert input in defining the scope. Say, for example, creating the work breakdown structure. We are writing down the strategy. This is our strategy. The project team will work together to create WBS. Sponsor and steering committee will review the WBS to ensure the project team will review the WBS similar projects, review the company corporate guidelines for creating the WBS. Focus on determining all the deliverables required for the project. Like that, we have to write down how we are going to do that. Say, verifying the completion of deliverables. The project manager worked with the sponsor and steering committee to develop a process for verifying the successful completion of the project deliverables. In general, sponsor with the The sponsor will be responsible for verifying the completion of major deliverables and so on. This is what the scope management plan. The next step is collect requirements. What is collect? Read through this discussion. You will understand how difficult the collect requirement is.
Yeah, Mr. Ravi, before we jump to the collect requirement, just quickly on the input of the first one of the scope management plan, scope management. Why only the quality management plan is used in this situation, not other?
The scope is related to the production of the deliverables, right?
Okay.
When we talk about the production of deliverables, methodology, technology, standards, processes takes the precedence in terms of achieving that. So mostly we come up with a strategy of what are the different methodology, technology available in the market in achieving the major deliverables defined in the project. That's what we are thinking. If it is quality management plan available, where we are defining the selected methodology standard. If it is not available, we will not use it. But when you are having any changes in the project during the life cycle, when you are revising the project management plan,
yeah,
where you have decided certain standards already, methodology, technology is selected. Now, due to the scope changes, you are revising the project management plan. That time, we will consider the current quality management plan as an input in devising the new methodology, technology which we are choosing to manage the project. That's why that time quality management plan will be considered.
This is
But
understood.
we will not consider that. Yes.
Yeah. How about the project life cycle description and the development approach? Those documents, those are not the project documents, correct? What stage we
they are part of the project management plan. When we are starting the first process, develop project management plan, we are deciding the life cycle approach. We are deciding the development approach there. It is already available with us.
Okay.
It is part of our mind mapping exercise.
And development approach of the whole project, management plan, of the management plan, not the project itself.
For the project itself, yes.
Okay.
Whether you are going for design and build approach or design, construct and operate approach, that kind of development approach you are thinking.
Okay, thank you.
Collect requirements. Read through this discussion happening there. Yes, you can realize how difficult the requirement collection is.
It seems he has a lot of money.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about requirement collection. When I say requirements, it should be quantified and documented needs and expectations of the stakeholders, or customer, or sponsor. We always need to remember these requirements need to be elicited, analyzed, and recorded in enough detail so that it could be included in the baseline and which can be easily measured while you are doing the project. If the requirements are not detailed enough, you will have a tough time whether you are achieving the requirements. Requirements become the foundation of the WBS. Right. Based on the requirements, we are developing the scope of work and then we breaking the scope of work into WBS. So what is the foundation for WBS? Requirements is the foundation for the WBS. Cost, schedule, quality planning, procurement, all are based on this requirements. Many organizations are categorizing the requirements into product requirements and project requirements, which we spoke about. When I say project requirements, like business requirements, project management requirements, delivery requirements, all comes under project requirements. Product requirements like information and technical requirements, safety, security requirements, performance requirements, and so on. Let's look at the process. Collect requirements. Let's think. In order to collect the requirements, what are all the elements I need to consider? That's my input. What is available in my hand so far? What is the information available about the project in my hand at this stage? I have my project chapter.
Yes,
Definitely
project
that is
chapter.
And we just thought about scope management plan. We created the scope management plan in the previous class. We created the requirement management plan in this process, where we have thought about how we are going to collect the requirements. Already we thought about it. What are the tools and techniques we are going to use, which is already available in the scope management. So we can use it. So scope management plan, requirement management plan, both are useful documents.
Sir,
If you have the stakeholder management plan, it is also very useful document. Why? In the stakeholder management plan, we are thinking about how we are going to engage the stakeholder during the planning, during the execution, during the monitoring control, during the closure. We are thinking about. Generally, what we do is, when we are developing the strategy in the develop project management plan process, first time, we will have a high-level thinking about stakeholder management plan, where we are thinking only about how we are going to manage the stakeholders during the planning. How we are going to engage them. Because in the stakeholders, many stakeholders having good capability in helping us in scope development or schedule development or risk quality standards, methodology selections, risk analysis, communication strategy development, procurement strategy development, many areas they can contribute positively. So we already have a strategy of how we are going to utilize them during the planning, how we are going to engage them basically during the planning work, which is available in the stakeholder management plan or stakeholder engagement. Yes, please. Boris, I'm trying to ask something.
I have one question, sir, actually.
Yes. Yes.
For example, in one road projects, assume that in a junction we have underpass and we have a flyover.
Okay.
And I think we need a meeting with our stakeholders. Which one is the priority? Which one has the priority? And you mean, yani, collect requirement means which one is priority and getting the which one is the base of deliverables, which one has the priority of deliverables, and in WBS it should be a priority, which means I think you mean this aim of this session.
Okay. Firstly,
am I right?
In this session, basically, yes, you are there, almost there. In this session, we are detailedly defining. When you say underpass, what is the requirement of underpass? I need to have 3 lanes in each direction. Each lane should be 3 meters in width. I need to have a barrier of say 2.5 meters in the middle breaker between the 2 direction flow of traffic. I want to have 4.5 meter height of the underpass, which should be usable by even heavy trucks. That kind of details must be available in the collect requirements process. Then only you can able to develop a scope in achieving that in an integrated manner.
Okay.
And while you are doing this, they may also tell you the priorities. They may ask you many things, but they may say, these are my priorities. They may also tell you during these discussions, it will happen.
And I
basically
believe,
here,
And I believe, sir, that this stage is a planning stage, right? It's like
It's
we are
the
trying to
planning.
plan, yeah, we're trying
It's a
to plan
planning.
the scope,
It's the
we
first
collect
step
the
of the
requirements,
planning,
yeah,
basically.
yeah, all planning
Uh,
stage.
I know what is the difficulty for you, because most of you all entering into the project only in the execution stage.
Yeah.
Yes.
At that stage, you have already all this work has been done already by the consultant.
Yeah, we
and
have all
project
the
manager.
baselines already there. That time.
So
For
they
example,
did this exercise with the clients and stakeholders. They came up with a tender document for you. It
Yes.
already a detailed scope of work available for you.
yes. For example, if we are starting a design and build project, we will
You
be
have to do that.
yes,
You are
we will
involved,
be
yes.
step by step following these procedures.
Correct.
Yeah, we are defining the business case, the demand, like that, the
Yes.
requirements of the stakeholder, the client. Like that.
Correct. Correct. That's why even though you are in the contractor, for example, you are getting the tender document, you are reading through the scope of work, you are trying to understand the project, you are coming up with the pricing and you submitting the tender, so you got awarded. During this exercise, when you are going through this scope of work, you will be able to highlight many inconsistencies between the different sections or different descriptions of the product and project work. They are highlighting because you have the execution expertise. You know, even sometimes some of the requirements must be included, but it is not available in the document given to you. So the contractor can be able to highlight, which is called eliciting the scope. So using their execution expertise, and they are eliciting the scope and they are highlighting to the client, and the scope is being modified through the tender clarifications, right, before even awarded. So all these are part of this process exercise. But generally it is happening with the project manager, consultants and the client side, they are doing this process. So as a contractor team, you may not do this, but you may elicit the information available and clarify in order to avoid discrepancies in the project during execution.
If all participants are from construction sector, if you please, Mr. Ravi, give us in each steps from construction samples, I will be very happy.
Okay, I'm already Muhammad requested for it. I'm actually collecting those information from my project server. I will see. I will give you the templates available.
Okay, and
give you a sample project management as well.
Also during our classes, if you make this, I will be very appreciative, sir.
Yeah, sure. This I want you to understand first. Then you can easily pick up. That's what I want you to do.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. The other project documents available is assumption log. Yes, definitely useful document. Lessons learned register from this project. We don't have our person. We are in the still a planning stage. When we are revising the plan, you may use the lessons learned register. Stakeholder register useful information from whom you are going to collect the requirements. From whom you are going to collect the requirements, stakeholders, right?
Yes.
So you need to understand who are the stakeholders in this project. So you have to use the stakeholder register. Where is this coming from?
You mean from which stage or which?
From which process?
Stakeholder
engagement plan.
Engagement plan.
Huh?
Stakeholder engagement plan.
That is the stakeholder engagement plan. It's called the stakeholder register. How can be same element? Where are we creating the stakeholder register?
The project charter.
No. Project charter contains key stakeholders are defined in the project charter. After that, what we did? After the project charter?
Communication.
No. After the project charter, what we have? The initiation.
Initiation. Develop project charter.
So after that,
And identify the stakeholders.
Yes, that is the result of this process is stakeholder register.
Okay.
Why we are forgetting this?
No.
Where we have discussed in detail who are the stakeholders, what is the stakeholder by name, which organization is coming from, what is the role he may play in the project, what are the major requirements of stakeholder, what are the expectations of the stakeholder, what kind of influence he may exert on the project, whether the stakeholder is a supporter, neutral, resistor to the project, what kind of knowledge, skills, expertise, experience they have, all that's been analyzed and documented into the stakeholder register, right? That is useful information here because you are going to collect the requirements from the stakeholders. So you must know who are the stakeholders to be called for in this process. Correct?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Next document is business case. So it gives you the information with respect to the various business point of view, and also it contains the requirements of the various end users or the stakeholders requirements of their agreements we have with the various parties in the project. A useful document. It also contains the requirements related to the project. We can consider enterprise environmental factors and organizational processes. You may use previous projects, lessons learned, experiences. So we can able to think of a way how best we can collect the requirements and complete the requirement documentation as soon as possible. That's what we are thinking using that document. Okay, good. Let's look at the tools and techniques. There are many techniques available. One is expert judgment. Second technique is data gathering. We will go in detail. Brainstorming, interviews, focus groups, questionnaires and surveys, benchmarking, data analysis technique. We have document analysis, decision-making technique. We have two techniques. All has been spoken before. Voting technique, multi-criteria additional analysis, data representation technique, affinity diagram, mind mapping, interpersonal and team skills, nominal group techniques, observation and conversation, facilitation, context diagrams, prototype. These are the techniques available. We will discuss in detail one by one. So what is the result of this process? Requirements documentation is the first result. Second result is requirement traceability map. Let's go into what's the benefit of this process? It provides the basis for defining the product scope and project scope. This process is performed at once or at predefined points in the project. This is straightforward process. When you create the requirement documentation and traceability matrix, which is being stored under project documents section. Expert judgment we know. Mainly we are looking for the expert judgment people, those who are having experience and training in the business analysis, requirement recitation, requirement analysis, requirement documentation, project requirements in previous similar projects, diagramming techniques, facilitation, conflict management, all these people having knowledge and experience, we can be utilized as experts. Data gathering techniques. One is brainstorming. This is the most commonly used technique in the requirement collection, where we are generating and collecting multiple ideas related to the project and product requirements by conducting the brainstorming sessions. Interview, it could be one-on-one or maybe we have 3 people in our team, other side 3 people, we sit down and discuss. You may ask questions, they may give you answers, you record down. Sometimes you may ask spontaneous questions, they give you the response and record down, and then finally put it in the proper order, review with them, and finalize the requirement. That's called interview technique. Also, you can note that if you are interviewing the experienced participants, sponsors and other executives and subject matter experts, they can be able to define the features and functions of the desired product deliverables. Interviews are more useful for obtaining the confidential information from the stakeholders. Data gathering techniques, next one is focus group. We spoke about focus groups before. Basically, in this technique, we are bringing together pre-qualified stakeholders and subject matter experts in order to get the details about the expectations and attitude of the proposed product, service, or result. But it requires trained moderator. Why you need trained moderator? Because it is an interactive session with the stakeholders and the team members, where it is better than the interview technique. Where, say for example, when we are talking about, say, security system, I need to collect the requirements related to the security system. Okay. Who are the people need to be involved in this session? You need to have the sponsor. You need to have the security consultant. You need to have the end users. You need to have the facility management company or security company who is going to manage, or their department within the sponsor organization. You may require architect and other security suppliers. So these people helpful for us in collecting the requirements related to the security system. That's called focus. So when they talk about the collection of requirements, sometimes we talk about describing the product first. When we are talking about describing the product, some stakeholder will jump to the maintenance, some stakeholders jump to the testing, some stakeholders jump to the performance. We cannot jump. If you jump from one section to other section, you will not be able to collect the requirements nicely. In this case, the moderator is required. The moderator will help you in taking the sessions in a structured manner. Guys, let us discuss about the product first. Then let's discuss about the functionalities. Let us discuss about the performance requirements. Let us discuss about quality requirements. Let us discuss about acceptance requirements. We will be taking you through the structured manner, so that you will be able to collect the requirements efficiently from all the stakeholders. That's called focus group. Questionnaires and surveys. Say, for example, you want to collect requirements from the 20 of our stakeholders in a particular deliverable or a package or for a product. Easy. You may conduct workshop with the 20. But one of the deliverable, it requires 100 stakeholders to be involved in defining the requirement related to this deliverable. What will you do? Will you conduct workshop with 100 people by taking a conference in the hotel? Even if you do, you may not get the proper collection of requirements. It may take time. So in this case, this is the best approach. So what do? You prepare a standard questionnaire. You distribute to all the stakeholders, 100 over stakeholders, give them 1 week, let them define the requirements and submit, and then you analyze all, and then you come up with a requirement documentation, and then you sit with the key stakeholders to finalize. That is called questionnaire. When you have a large number of stakeholders involved, you require a result in a shorter time, you need to go for questionnaire survey. For example, in the country, we are conducting, say, economic statistics. Or are you going to take, say, 2.5 million population? Are you going to take from each and every household or each and every member of the population data from them? No. You may select a 1 million population, for example. You may send the statistics to them, ask them the data, they provide the data, you analyze the data, you come up with a economic statistics. That is comes under the questionnaire research survey. Next one is benchmarking. What is benchmarking? For example, I did a, say, Emirate map for a customer. Another customer coming to me. Ravi, I want to develop a mall like a Emirates Mall. I want to develop a mall like a Emirates Mall. That is benchmark. So he's telling me I want to develop a malls like Emirates Mall. So I know what are the requirements of the Emirates Mall. So I will be able to describe with them, these are the requirements we use, these are the functionalities and performance we can expect from this mall operation and so on. I can able to discuss with the key stakeholders, I can finalize. When they talk about the benchmarking of a project, it could be the company has done in the past. Maybe they have done developed one mall. They are asking, they are going to develop another mall. Give me that kind of mall for me. That's good enough for me. That's my requirement. Or they may refer to some project in the industry as a benchmark, so that we can able to set what all the key requirements related to the mall can be included in the project. That's called benchmarking technique. The next technique is data analysis technique. Data analysis. What is data analysis? Here we are reviewing all the available document and assessing and taking the information from them related to the project. For example, we have a lot of agreements we made with the business, various companies, which gives you the requirements related to the project, business plans, business process or interpretation documentation of the company, business rule repositories, current business process flows, marketing literature gives us information related to the requirements, problem on issue logs, policy and procedure of the organization, regulatory documentations, laws, codes, and ordinances, request for proposal will help us, user cases. So we are analyzing this document to understand the requirements of the project in detail. That is called data analysis technique. The next technique is decision-making techniques. The commonly used technique is voting process. It is a collective decision-making technique. The assessment process having multiple alternatives with an expected outcome in the form of future actions. Examples of voting techniques: anonymity. That's anonymity. A decision is reached where everyone agrees on a single course of action. We are talking about the requirements. So everybody wants this particular requirement. Everybody agrees, yes, we need this requirement. That's called anonymity. Majority. A decision is reached with the support from the 50% of the members in the group. Plurality. Here, where decision is reached, where the largest block of the group decides, even if we are not achieving the majority. Generally, this method is used when the number of nominated is more than 2. We use this method. Plurality. Autocratic decision making. One individual make decision. The sponsor say, I want this requirement, for example. Then everybody agrees, says, okay, let's go with this. That's the autocratic decision. Multi-criteria decision analysis. Here you are using a decision matrix. You are applying the systematic analytical approach for establishing the criteria like risk level, uncertainty, valuation to evaluate and rank many ideas. All is being done. Accordingly, we select the requirements. That is called multi-criteria decision analysis. Next technique is data representation technique. Affinity diagram. Affinity diagram. Here, in this method, we are allowing the large number of ideas are classified into groups for review and further analysis. Like ideas related to the product requirements, idea related to the project requirement, idea related to the functional requirement, idea related to the maintenance requirement, quality requirements. So we group them and then we reanalyze and select the requirements from them. Mind mapping technique, another good technique. It consolidates the ideas through the individual brainstorming sessions into a single map to see the commonality of the requirements and difference in understanding of the different requirements of the stakeholders. That's called mind mapping technique. The next technique is interpersonal and team skills. One of the commonly used technique is nominal group technique. In the nominal group technique, you are enhancing the brainstorming with your voting process. In order to rank the most useful idea developed during the brainstorming session, or you may go for prioritization in this technique. Nominal group technique goes in this following manner. Number one, a question is posed out to the group. Each person silently writes the ideas related to the requirements. The moderator writes down all the ideas in the flip chart. All the ideas are recorded from all the participants. Each recorded idea are discussed until all the group members have a clear understanding of the specific requirements proposed by the different members in the group. Then individuals vote privately to prioritize the idea, usually in the scale of 1 to 5. 1 is the lowest, 5 is the highest. Voting may take place multiple rounds in order to reduce and focus on the key requirements. After each round, the votes are tallied and the highest scoring ideas or requirements are selected. That's called nominal group technique. Observation and conversation. I give a simple example to understand this technique. When you are talking about the collection of requirements, do you think that every member participating in this exercise all are highly educated like you? No. Sometimes some of the stakeholders could be an office worker or office executive who is only doing the operation related to a particular deliverable. He may not come up with a well write-up. He may not even express what do you want in the product. When you are conducting the workshop, you cannot able to express. How to get requirements from such a people? In this technique, we are using this technique for this. Why? We go to with the particular stakeholder to their business operation to understand what is their requirements. They are not able to express their requirements in the meeting, but they can able to show you what is the requirement in their day-to-day business operation. They can tell you, sir, when I am doing this activity, I am facing this problem. If I have this, I will be able to do my work perfectly. So they can able to show you in their business operation. It is called as observation. So we are joining with the people as a participant in their business operation to understand the requirements. That's called observation and conversation, which is also known as job shadowing. The next technique, most commonly used technique, is facilitation. The facilitation skills are used in the following situations. One is the joint application development, JID sessions, which is generally used in the software industry. These sessions focus on bringing the business subject matter experts and the development team together to gather the requirements and improve the software development process. Quality function deployment sessions, which is used in the manufacturing industry, which is another facilitation technique which helps in determining the critical characteristics of a new product. The QFC starts by collecting the customer needs, which is known as voice of customer. These needs are then objectively sorted out and prioritized, and then set the goals for achieving them. That is called quality function deployment. Another method is user stories. The users in the organization, they are telling their stories. What kind of problem they are facing, in what stage you are facing this problem. If I have these requirements, I will be able to solve this problem. I will be able to achieve my business work efficiently. They can able to do. That's called user stage. This all comes under facilitation technique, so that we can able to collect the requirements from the users. The next one is context diagram, which is the seventh technique. That is context diagram. Sometimes when we are talking about requirements, product requirement, project requirement, technical requirement, quality requirements, so on. Some people may not understand all these requirements, why we need these requirements. But if we show these requirements, group them into the different product, project, technical, functionality, business, quality, acceptance, and so on, we can able to link them with the business processes, like how these requirements related to the financial system, how this requirement related to the operational system, how is related to the technical system, how is related to the management system. So we connect and show them in a context diagram. They will be able to understand the requirements well, and they can be able to confirm, yes, this is what we want. That is called context diagram. The next one is prototype, which is most commonly used. I will give you a simple explanation or example for understanding the prototype. Say, for example, you are trying to finalize the requirements with the sponsor. Initially, you go with a small write-up. You are explaining to him, so these are the items to be included in the project. He said, yes, most probably what you are saying is correct, but I am not able to confirm. Then he came up with a small sketches to show the link between the various operations and so on. Then he said, yes, now you have better understanding of my requirement. And then you come up with a 2D drawing or 3D drawing. Then you go to him. Oh yeah, now you have better understanding. But still he is not able to confirm the requirements related to a particular deliverable. Whereas, if you go with a small scale working model of the product itself, he can able to tell you, yeah, this is what I want. Can you modify this? Can you add this functionality? Can you change this shape? Can you add a handle here? Can you add this functionality? You can able to see the real scale, what is the final product is going to get. So you can able to easily understand and confirm the requirement. Yes, this is what I want. That's called prototype, which is a small scale working model. Remember, what is the commonly used prototype? Can you give me an example from the construction industry? What is the prototype we are doing in the industry? Anybody can tell me? Some prototype example from the industry.
It has many
What's the question,
applications.
sir? Again, I'm sorry. I just.
What is the example of
What's the question, sir?
prototype? What prototype we are doing in the industry? Say construction industry.
Many examples. In some
Yeah.
places for bridges, we do the post-tensioning example, the prototype for the simulation. Sometimes we do a villa, complete villa as a prototype for the client to see how it looks like the final product.
You have to see the appearance. the
Mock-up, you
scheme.
mean mock-up? You mean
Mock-ups,
Like-
yes.
Like
Yeah.
mock-up.
Mock-up. There's a small difference between mock-up and prototype.
Mhm.
Say, for example, in the high-rise buildings, when you're doing high-rise spacing, one of the major elements is external glass cladding. External glass cladding, right?
Correct.
So they design certain system. You produce the system, you install it. After completing, you realize this system will not work for this wind load condition. What will happen? Are you going to tear down all the glass? No, right?
No.
So before we go for the actual production of the glass, we need to do a prototype
Yes.
glass glazing system.
We tested on the air, on the rain.
And then we test for structural stability, wind load stability, negative pressure, leakage test.
Mhm.
Basically, we are testing the performance of the system.
Mhm.
And then we confirm, yes, this system performs for the intended purpose. And then we go for mass production of the glazing project. Why we do that? There is the biggest advantage, which is also comes under our concept of progressive elaboration. In this, during the production of the prototype, we are able to understand the product very well. We are using the actual methodology, technology, processes, procedures, everything we are using it in producing the prototype. So whatever the problem we are facing during the prototype execution, we will be able to solve easily. Because we are doing in a smaller scale. So all the problems are solved. So when we are going for mass production and installation, you will be able to get the best results. You will be able to understand product better. So your productivity improves. It increases the quality itself. You will be able to achieve the result without any defects. What's the difference between prototype and mock-up? It's a simple difference only. Both are comes under the same category. In the mock-up, you may see the actual product, but you may not have a chance for testing the functionality of all the elements in the mock-up. Whereas when you say for a prototype, you should be able to test the functionality and performance of the product. That's it. Okay.
And I believe,
You can
sir,
see all the product. Yeah.
the two difference also is for prototype, since it's like the actual product that we will going to
It could
execute.
be actual product.
This one can be used
Commercial
as
model.
a permanent work, right? Unlike for the markup, you cannot use this one in a permanent work.
No. It
Yeah.
depends on where are you doing the prototype. You may do the one or two panels as a mock-up in the project site. It may be permanent.
Or offsite.
If it is, the prototype is approved in the factory. But you are doing the prototype testing in the factory. It cannot be tested in the site.
But what if it is the markup is a dry in a sense of water and plumbing,
Maybe we can do
drainage like that?
the drainage like that. No, mainly in the glazing, we only see the color selection. We do that in the site for the color selection purpose. But when we do the prototype, we are testing for structural stability, negative pressure, wind load test, and we may even destruct the mock-up.
Yes.
Okay.
For example,
It's not necessarily it should be non-destructive. It could be sometimes destructive testing as well in the prototype development. Yeah.
yes. For example, dams, dam designs. We need to often we need to simulations and prototype.
Simulations. Mostly you do simulation. You may not do the prototype for that.
Correct.
You may
Correct.
do the simulation.
Yeah.
Harbor design also.
You may
Same.
do a
Yeah.
computer simulation comes under the prototype also.
And sometimes they test it under the same factors, but in the lab, like they make a harbor
In
or
the
dam.
laboratory.
Yes, exactly. They
That's
push the
a
wave.
smaller
on the water.
scale.
Okay, correct.
That's smaller scale. So which helps us in understanding the product better. Which here, why we are using this? Through this exercise, we are confirming this is what we want from the stakeholders. Because stakeholders are, we can say, illiterate. They don't know anything. So they need to see the small scale actual product, final product, so they can confirm, yes, this is what I want, which is being done through the prototype method. But generally, mock-up, when you say mock-up, as I say, we can see the actual product. But generally, mock-up used for achieving the quality improvement. To test our designed processes, methodology, technology, which we have selected for the project. So when we are, after you decide the, say, for example, you completed the quality management plan development, where you are defined your methodology, technology, standards, processes, everything for the different type of deliverables. Are you going to implement straight away this management, the quality management plan across all the projects? You may not do that. Why? You may take a small portion of the work. You will apply the designed processes. You will see the results, what we are getting. Is there any problem in our processes? Any problem in the sequence we have decided? Any problem in the methodology, technology? When you are doing it in a smaller work, whatever the problem you are facing, you can able to solve it. So when you are going into the mass production of the project work, you will be facing lesser problems. You will be able to achieve the expected result. That is being done through the mock-up, so that we can make improvement in the quality. So what is the result? Requirement documentation, where you are describing the individual requirement meets the business need of the project. You may start with a high level description requirement, and then you will be describing in detail. Progressively, when you collect more information. Before being baselines, requirements need to be unambiguous. What do you mean unambiguous? It should be well defined, measurable and testable, traceable, complete, consistent, and acceptable to the key stakeholder. The format of the requirements may range from simple document listing out all the requirements, categorizing by stakeholders and priority, or it could be more elaborate forms like exhibit